Good morning, Chicago Cubs fans. We are back with another edition of Cubs Daily. My name is Steven Ryan, presented by FanArch. Today, we're going to discuss who will be returning to the roster in 2026. We're going to discuss the lockout looming after the 2026 season and what that could mean in terms of spending for the Cubs this offseason. And then we're going to grade Cubs players by their season. So we're going to take a player today, and then we're going to take another player tomorrow, so on and so forth, healthily into the middle of November by the time the roster is over. And then I'm going to give you guys a little perspective on the NLCS and should it mean anything to the Cubs. So let's hop right on into it. We're going to talk about who is coming back to this Cubs team. I know the speculation and the discussion all offseason will be about Kyle Tucker and how he will be coming back, if he will be coming back to the Cubs. It's looking like that's not going to be occurring. The way he played towards the end of the year, I can't imagine the Cubs are going to want to offer him a very, very long-term deal. Now, the way he played at the end of the year kind of leans in favor of the Cubs in terms of the price range they're going to want to give him. But in the next segment, when we talk about the lockout, that all kind of is going to start playing a factor into the Cubs' decision-makings this offseason. So, disregarding Kyle Tucker, we're going to assume he's not coming back. Well, players we know for sure are coming back to the club, okay? We are returning 7 of the 8 field position players, right? Where we're going to return Ian Happ. Pete Crow-Armstrong is going to come back to the club. The whole infield is back, right? Matt Shaw, Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner, and Michael Busch will be on the team. We're going to get Carson Kelly back for a season as well, and Miguel Amaya. And then in terms of pitching, we know Justin Steele is going to return from his injury. Cade Horton will be with the club. Matthew Boyd and Jameson Taillon. If the Cubs do accept Shota's player option, he'll be back with the club as well. But again, we'll have to dive into that a little deeper in another episode. So the Cubs are returning a lot of players, which is good to see. Players expiring at the end of the 2026 season. I know notable names include Ian Happ, Nico Horner, and there was a third one who I know Carson Kelly will be expiring at the end of 2026 as well. And I believe Seiya Suzuki will be expiring at the end of 2026 as well. And I forgot to mention Seiya Suzuki will be back with the club as well. So a lot of big bats are going to be returning, which is great to see. But we kind of have to put that into perspective, right? A lot of these guys had really, really good seasons, right? Dansby Swanson had his best season as a Cub. The only consistent player I can really think of from this team is Nico Horner. Nico Horner does this. He hits the ball really well. He plays great defense all the time. There's no denying any of that. PCA had a breakout season. We're going to get to him in the grading of the Cubs section here in a moment. But, Michael Busch had a big-time year as well. Matt Shaw had his rookie year, so hopefully he can grow from that. Ian Happ had a strong finish to the end of the season, but a lot of question marks surrounding Ian Happ from this personal Cub fan and, maybe a good amount of Cub fans out there as well. So that's kind of generally who's going to be back with the team. We didn't trade Owen Casey or Kevin Alcantara, so I imagine that they're going to have a part in the big league club, especially if we do not re-sign Kyle Tucker. I expect Owen Casey to get some more playing time, and same with the Jaguar. In terms of young prospect pitching, Jackson Wiggins, he still hasn't gone through the full program yet, so maybe he'll jump up to AAA next season, but I don't imagine him being with the big league club. So the 2025 Cubs are going to be basically the 2026 Cubs with maybe a few key free agent additions, but those free agent additions are going to be widely affected here by a potential lockout, right? The lockout is going to be tremendously impactful. Tremendously impactful in that situation of how, this looks for the future of this team. You already know the Ricketts don't like, necessarily spending money. It's probably maybe the number one complaint of all Cubs fans, would you say? I would maybe say, right? Cubs fans, sound off in the comments below. What's your big complaint about the Ricketts and co? But, I imagine they already don't want to fork it over for Kyle Tucker, especially if there's going to be some missed time. in that regard, but that's a big decision there because you can't look at this 2025 Cubs team without thinking like, wow, they really did have a lot of really, really good years. I know Kyle Tucker isn't the direct factor of that, but his presence in the lineup really expands out into the other players in the lineup, allowing them to see really good pitches and allowing them to execute on that. So you kind of got to think about that going forward, but this is a big lockout, okay, ladies and gentlemen? This is a tremendous lockout, right? Especially when we're talking about the NLCS right now. You have the Dodgers, who, literally built for fall, as they would say. They spend the money, they invest in the players. There's no denying that. Whether you want to say it's fair or not, that's totally fine. I'm not going to argue with you about it, but that's the way the sport is, right? The Yankees spend a lot of money. The Dodgers spend a lot of money. The Mets spend a lot of money, and they don't make the playoffs, which is kind of what makes it hilarious. You see the Brewers, and they spend the money intelligently, and they're in the NLCS. But when you watch the NLCS, you're just like, I don't like that matchup. And, the Dodgers are currently up 2-0. So some of the big issues that we're going to be talking about going into the December lockout, salary cap dispute, right? Major League Baseball owners are expected to demand a hard salary cap, which the players oppose. Obviously, all the players want to make as much money as possible, which I totally understand. But a salary cap would restrict the salaries, right? It would make the Dodgers probably not be able to afford all of Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and Freddie Freeman, and Teoscar Hernandez, and Blake Snell. They couldn't just be handing out cash like it's nothing. It would restrict player salaries and a point of significant contention in negotiation. So this is what could affect most of the 2027 season. They're expecting games to be lost. They expect this to be, not hostile, but a tough negotiation from the CBA and, all that good stuff. And then, they also have revenue and valuation concerns. Owners are concerned that their financial growth and team valuations are lagging behind other major league sports. And that's a fair thought because, right, there's 162 games in a year. That's double the NBA, double hockey, and, X way more than the NFL. But again, the NFL is its own special package in that sense. So, a hard salary cap would help them achieve more compressed valuations and control spending. And that is absolutely true, right? You kind of really learned who's all about what in the baseball playoff ownership or in playoff ownership or baseball ownership, right? Like, the Dodgers want to win titles. So they're willing to spend the money to win titles. They understand that when you play in October, you're going to make more money. The Pirates, they might understand that concept, but they just want to get to the postseason. They don't necessarily want to win the title. It costs a lot of money to build a 100-win team. But, maybe there's more money in it for you if you win an 83-win team and just so happen to be lucky into the playoffs. There's a lot of different factors into all that stuff. Take it with a grain of salt. I don't really know much about the intense issues in there, but I think a major contention point, especially showing up in this CS, is a salary cap. Baseball needs a salary cap, okay? Kind of evens the playing field around a little bit. It will distribute the talent level amongst all major league clubs. One of the funny points to me is I don't think the Dodgers or the Yankees necessarily have a problem with the salary cap. I think it's the Pirates, Reds, and Marlins that have a problem with the salary cap, right? Because with the salary cap, there's going to be a salary floor. So teams are going to have to there's going to be at the minimum that has to be spent. And if you look at some of these payrolls, they do not meet anywhere near close to the potential minimum. So very curious to see how that all goes out. But at least we have one more season of baseball ahead of us. So just wanted to give you guys a little tease into what that was going to be like. So I am going to take you guys grading each player season or, player by player, day by day here on Cubs Daily. And you know what? We're going to rock with Pete Crow-Armstrong. Maybe the biggest... his first year was very short, 2023. I think he only got like 9 at-bats or something. He didn't get a hit. It really wasn't a good look for him. First half of 2024, he struggled mightily. But the second half of 2024, he started to figure things out. The team looked a little bit better offensively, and he was starting to figure it out. And then the first half of 2025 happened, and he exploded onto the scene. And, I'm going to give you guys, some numbers here to look at and think about, right? So batting average 247, that's a little above league average, so he's an average contact hitter. Obviously the plate discipline is something that's left to be desired. There's no doubt about that. On base is a little too low in my eyes for a guy with that much speed, but again, with time, with development, I think he can absolutely get there. The slugging is what you like to see. 31 home runs is absolutely sensational, and 95 runs batted in. So I am going to give Pete Crow-Armstrong an A for the season, because if you just look at those numbers as is, he's had a hell of a year. But there's always a story within the story, right? And you have to really consider that here with Pete Crow-Armstrong, okay? So I have some numbers here that aren't necessarily great. His first half was unbelievable. Maybe he was on pace for 40-40. He looked unstoppable. He looked like a potential MVP candidate. His first half, he had a 131 WRC, which is a big-time evaluation for hitters in baseball. Average is 100. He hit 131. And then he had 25 home runs before the All-Star break. And you're just like, what? 25 home runs? Exactly. You think he could have hit 15, 20 more. He was going to have 40-something home runs. The second half, which, it wasn't directly just half the games, but with 60, 70 games, 70, 80 games left, he only hit 6 more home runs. He started striking out a little bit more, and his WRC dropped all the way to 72. So it was really a feast or famine type half for Pete Crow-Armstrong this season. Now I expect with age, experience, and his potential, he will even those numbers out and maybe have a more balanced season across the board. But either way, it was a tough end for Pete. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because he's young. He at least brings his glove every single day, which you love to see. So, let's get to the final topic here. It's been an absolutely fun show here. I want to talk to you guys and gals about the outcome of the NLCS. And does it mean anything for the Cubs? You're like, Steven, what the are you talking about? And I'm like, I thought about it. I can't stand the Brewers. The Dodgers don't bother me as much as it bothers other people because they spend money. I'm like, I get it. Their owner wants to win. That's great. If you can convince all these players to come together and play ball together and you pay them accordingly, you're going to win. That's great. LA is obviously a beautiful city, great weather, constant, upper echelon things. I don't blame any of these players wanting to go there. But I don't think the outcome of this NLCS means anything towards the Cubs and what we're trying to build. If we don't want to act like the Dodgers, which again, you can act like the Dodgers, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. Right, Mets? The Mets have spent a lot of money. They didn't get there. Obviously, things happen, injuries happen. But you have to remember, right, the Dodgers, their starting pitching, their pitching got hurt all season long this year. They only won like 92 games or something like that. And yeah, they still are going to probably go to the World Series and maybe be favorites in that matchup. The Brewers, they budget, they scout, they develop, they do it all there, man. But you have to remember, even though Andrew Vaughn has come up on the scene with the Brewers, he's still Andrew Vaughn. And when push comes to shove in October, it's not going to matter. Like, straight up, it's not going to matter. Do you know who the all-time leading home run hitter in Dodgers postseason history is? It's Max Muncy. Max Muncy bats 5th in that lineup. 6th, even. He has postseason experience seasoning. Kike Hernandez, the same way. Those role players for the Dodgers are awesome. That team is built for fall, quite literally, as their shirt says. So again, I don't know there's not one move, in my opinion, the Cubs can do this offseason, or 2 or 3 moves that's going to put them over the top for the Dodgers. While this current structure of baseball is in play, the Cubs can only do is build the best team they can, get to October, and hope the ball lands right. Because that is the way baseball is, right? Sometimes you hit the ball on a rocket 115 miles an hour right at somebody. But sometimes you only hit it 70 off the bat and it bloops in for a single. Baseball doesn't work as linearly as football and baseball or basketball does. Sometimes there's a little bit of luck involved. You saw the Brewers, you saw that double play. I thought they were going to go win the World Series after that. I was like, okay, things are going to roll their way. But you know what? Dodgers are still up 2-0, and they're going back to LA for 3. And honestly, if the Brewers force it back to Milwaukee, good on them. That's a good job for the Brewers, honestly, but it's going to be really, really tough. So I don't think the outcome of this NLCS means anything. I've heard that if the Brewers win, then the Cubs can convince themselves that they're that close. We're not close. We're not as close to the Dodgers. I like this team. I like how we did. But again, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of development to continue to do. And that's the only way we're going to find a way to potentially beat the Dodgers down the road. And maybe a salary cap in 2027. Just my thoughts on that one. So I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. And I'll be back tomorrow in the next one. Peace.